our talk this morning, and we make these just about a 15-minute. We'll just chat a little bit about different subjects. Today we're talking about conifers in the garden. I've always been a fan of conifers in the garden, and a really turning point in this region was the late J.C. Ralston back in the late 70s when he got the arboretum started. One of his stated goals, was he wanted to find conifers that would grow in the South, because all the books said conifers don't grow in the South. Well, of course, that was sort of silly because we have native conifers like the pines we see out here. And conifers are very prehistoric plants. They evolved before plants discovered how to flower. So conifers' ideas of flowers are what we call pine pollen. All conifers are wind pollinated. There's no insects have anything to do with it. Just the pollen from the males has to fly through the wind. And days like today, the conifers absolutely love it if the flowers are open. So that's what distinguishes a conifer from other plants. So one of the things J.C. found is that yes, in fact, there are a lot of conifers that do very well here in the South. They've still got a very good collection from his work at the Arboretum, and we'll look at some of those today. So we'll focus on several different genera. Probably the genera that's considered the hardest to grow here are the firs. And that's because everybody really thinks of firs in terms of the balsam fir or the other plants that are used as Christmas trees. But reality is there are a lot of really good firs for this area. One of my favorites is this one here, and this is the Turkish fir. This is Abies Bornmuelleriana. This is one we grew from seed. That is now a 15-year-old plant. So it grows about a foot a year, which is the same rate that a typical balsam. And yet this fir is extremely adaptable to this area. So it's sort of surprising that more people aren't growing this. And it's simply because there's just not a lot of availability in the east. You pretty much have to buy seed or buy the plants off the west coast. So we've been trying to get nurserymen to really start doing more of that. A group that's very common are the Cryptomerias, or Japanese cedars. And this is one right here. And the Japanese cedars are typically very tall trees, 60 to 100 feet. There are a lot of what's called dwarf conifers. Dwarf is one of those words that has a very interesting definition. Dwarf means somebody has a taller one. Dwarf is not a size. So you have to be aware of that when you're buying. So this is a dwarf, but it's going to mature out in the 15 to 20 foot range. We have other dwarfs you'll see that mature anywhere from 1 foot to 4 foot tall. So there are various sizes of any conifers. All right. Another group are the fall cypress, or Camaecyparis. Cami means fall, Cypress, cypress. You'll see a lot of these, but there are two basic species that are very common. This is Camaecyparis obtusa, common name of Hinoki cypress, and then this Camaecyparis piscifera, which is called saguaro cypress. And basically the saguaros are much faster growing, so if we walk over here a little further, so this is one of the Hinokis, and again, this is a dwarf. So if you bought this in a store, this is Confucius, that's sold as a dwarf, and most catalogs are probably going to tell you that matures out at 4 to 6 feet. Well, not really. So we typically, when we see sizes in a catalog, we typically multiply it by 3. And that's going to give you the actual size. Okay, so let's look at, we talked about this Camaecyparis. Here's the other Camaecyparis. This is a saguaro cypress, Camaecyparis piscifera. This is one called Vintage Gold. We bought that, and the book said it's going to mature out at 6 feet tall. And if you go in the front garden out by the garage, you'll see a Boulevard cypress. It's another one that's sold as a 6 foot tall. Ours is now over 30 feet tall. So when you plant these, you have to be very, very careful to get them in the right spot, or they'll eat your house or whatever. Now, one of the more unusual conifers is the plant right here in front of the house. This is a very rare conifer. It is what's known as a monotypic genus. It means there's only one of them. This is the genus Cathaya. It's Cathaya argyrophylla. It was first brought, it's a native to China. It was one of their very rare sacred trees, first brought into the U.S. about 20 years ago. This is one of the very first ones. We were told it wouldn't tolerate heat or cold, and actually it's tolerated both quite well. Still not a lot of it around. Looks very similar to a Japanese umbrella pine, Sciadopitys, but it's actually more closely related to Douglas fir. But it's turned out a really, really good plant. And obviously, if I was growing that again, I would have planted it in a different place now that I know it's going to live, because we really assumed it had no chance. Now, this is one of J.C. Ralston's favorite plants. This is one he really touted. This is Keteleeria. Keteleeria is another Asian plant. It's dependent on your taxonomist, anywhere from 4 to 6 species. It's a very fast-growing plant, beautiful evergreen, and it has fantastic cones on it. If you come in the fall, you'll see the amazing, amazing cones. The one that JC originally grew opened very early in spring. It would always get blasted by the frost, but that was simply one bad seedling, because we've never seen that issue here. In China, they actually eat the needles. They served them to us one night, sauteed, and it was like chewing on hard plastic. I believe I could have found other things that were more tasty than Keteleeria, but they are edible. This is also another Chamaecyparis. Of course, again, depends on your taxonomist. They're always moving this stuff around. This is native to Alaska. It's called the Alaska cedar, Chamaecyparis nootkatensis, from the Nootka Peninsula out on the west coast. Typically, we can't grow the west coast conifers very well. We can grow a few of them, but this is fantastic because of the west coast. It grows in swamps. And our problem with bringing plants from the west coast typically is they don't like our summer rains. This one, since it lives in the swamp, doesn't actually mind. Now, the growth rate on west coast conifers, or on all conifers, are much slower in the east. What happens is the heat of the day, the sun of the day, builds up energy in the plant. One of two things happens at night. If the temperature is low enough, all that energy it absorbed during the day goes into growth, and you get a fantastic amount of growth. If the temperature at night stays high, as it does here in the summer, all that is used up just keeping the plant alive, so it's not able to go into growth. So our growth rates are about 1/3 of what you would see on the west coast, where it had cool night temperatures. So when you go out there and somebody says, well, this is 5 years old, back here, it's going to be 1/3 that height in that same time frame. And again, you're looking under a false Cypress. Again, so just look at the size of that. And again, we bought that as a 6-footer. And this is what happens. People put these right by the house, and then next thing you know, you got a problem. So we decided, instead of taking it out, we just limb it up. Okay, here's another Hinoki cypress. Chinensis. Now, this is very interesting. What you will see on a lot of the dwarfs are dwarfs because they originally occur on mutation of tall plants. Plants actually will often mutate back. And if you don't realize it's mutating back, your plant will get taller. Kanaamihiba matures out about this tall. So this one actually mutated and did not get cut back. So this is the original plant from which the dwarf mutated. So when you're out there and you look at your plant, you see one growth sort of going a little wacky. That's a mutation. And the mutation, being more vigorous, is actually going to kill off the original. There's a lot of junipers. We certainly know those. This is Juniperus rigida. This is a plant we see occasionally. I love it because it's very architectural, it's very open, it's sort of spooky looking, very sharp, and this is an Asian native to China, Japan, and parts of Korea. You'll see several as we walk through the gardens today. Now, I mentioned about the Japanese cedars and dwarf. Here is an example of a dwarf. That is probably mature size. This is probably now about 20 years old. So this is Osaka Tamasaka. And that's never been pruned. That's its natural size. So you can find dwarfs that are actually what we trying to think of as dwarfs, and then other dwarfs you have to just research and look at the size. Now, the Chamaecyparis are one of the most shade tolerant of all the conifers. Most conifers really need full sun. Chamaecyparis can do very well in a light shade, not a deep shade, but a light shade. Another wonderful genus are the Podocarpus, and we typically see Podocarpus being used much further in the deep south, because a lot of the stuff that's in the trade commercially is not winter hardy here. The plant to grow here is Podocarpus macrophyllus, and these we've had no problem with any of the winters, and these are very upright. Some people love limbing them up because the bark is really attractive on these, and they're also, they're normally male and female, but there are self-fruiting forms, and the fruit on these are fascinating. Some of them are blue and some of them are red, and they look like balls with little strings hanging out of them. They're really amazing plants.
What is the name of it again?
Podocarpus. Now, most Podocarpus macrophyllus is Chinese. There are also some Podocarpus from New Zealand that will actually grow here, and those are generally going to be a little bit smaller than these. But these are nice, fairly narrow. You can use those where you need something that's not as wide as some of the other cypress. Of other genera that we haven't looked at yet. One are the yews, Y-E-U. This is the genus Taxus. If you originated up north, you know that because that's sort of everybody's. Down here we use Japanese hollies for foundation. Up north they use Taxus. Taxus is a very interesting plant. The original ones were normally fairly tall, and people through the years have selected dwarf forms and variegated forms. This is one called Aurescens nana. It'll get a little bit taller, but that's getting close to mature height. But the spread is pretty big. Spread's going to be 12 to 15 feet. What the books say that Taxus don't grow in the south. They do grow fine. They just need well-drained soil. They are not very tolerant of very poor drainage. This one, when it comes out in the spring, in about another week, this will be brilliant yellow, just screaming yellow. And the old growth down below that will stay green. Then gradually over the summer, the color ages to green. But a really great plant, and they are very useful down here, despite what the books say. Okay, here's a genera we haven't looked at yet. This is Torreya. This is Torreya grandis. This is the nutmeg tree. And this is very close cousin to the Keteleeria we saw in the front. This is actually from seed we collected on an island off the coast of Korea. And the Torreas do very, very nice, wonderful soft needles. The Keteleeria has very rigid needles. These are much softer. And when they get large, it does develop a fruit that is highly edible. You would see people over in Korea just in big baskets, just picking up the fruit by the thousands that they take home to use. And we also have not looked yet at spruces. There is also a large number of spruces that do very well in this area. Again, despite what the books say. But many of the Asian spruces, some of the U.S. native spruces, the key is looking at elevation. If a spruce grows at 9,000–10,000 feet elevation, it's not going to grow right. If it grows at low elevations, it's generally going to do very well. And spruces are known and really grown for their beautiful cones, which can be into the brownish reds, they can be into the blues, just amazing, amazing colors. Now we looked at yews a minute ago. That's a wild yew. That giant one over there, that's Taxus chinensis. So that's what yews normally look like. They don't normally look like the foundation shrubs that have been selected for people to buy. Now here's another Cryptomeria. This is one called yellow twig. I don't know why it's called yellow twig because there's nothing about it ever yellowed. But again, this is a dwarf, so now this is probably 20–25 feet, where again, the original would be 60 to 100 feet. See here, this is another of the the firs. This is the one that J.C. Rawson really promoted. This is Firma. Thank you. Drawing a blank there. Firma is also a very nice one, very different look than the Bornmuelleriana fir we looked at around there. It doesn't quite have the typical fir look, which is why I prefer Bornmuelleriana, but it is an absolutely fabulous plant. A couple other plants for some shade. One are the hemlocks. And there are actually a large number of hemlocks that do very well down here from our native Asuga canadensis. This is one of the Asians. We're just trying some of the Pacific ones to see how they do. But so far we don't have the woolly adelgid down here either, which is nice that they have up in the mountains. But they're looking at many of these Asian hemlocks as being much more resistant than our native is. Behind that is another fantastic plant. This is another Asian genus called Thujopsis. Thujopsis is first cousin to argyrophylla, which we really haven't looked at, but it is much more shade tolerant than those are. Really very attractive plant that we think should be used a lot more. A couple things we haven't really looked at, but I'm not going to drag you the rest of the garden. I'll let you look at that. Are a couple things. We looked at some junipers around there. What a lot of people don't realize is the common junipers that we see, things like Blue Rug, those are actually U.S. natives. A lot of people think, well, that's got to be Asian. Well, it's not. It's actually a native to the U.S. Occurs anywhere from Colorado up into Canada and across the entire northern U.S. And the other is argyrophylla. Argyrophylla was always thought of as sort of a trash plant. That's actually an East Coast native. We've actually seen those in the wild in Tennessee there and all the way into Arkansas. It's really quite amazing. And yet, when we talk about gardening with natives, we don't think about argyrophylla and Blue Rug Junipers, but yet they are native. So I hope that gives you a little bit of idea on conifers today. And if you've got any questions, please feel free, and we'll be around if you have any others.
Thank you.
Thank you all.